Well, guys, the world is officially turned upside down. As you all know, with it being about 36 hours or so later, Soto's a Met, which is crazy. Something that a week ago I thought was only a dream. I didn't think it was ever going to happen. Um, Obviously, I was wrong, and happily, I was wrong. Um, I'm not going to talk too much about that today because, like I said, it is 36 hours later. You've heard from everybody already. There's no real new opinions to pass on, but I just want to talk a little bit about. There's two real reasons why he's a Met right now. The first one is that Cohen clearly was never going to be beat, no matter what. He was just never going to stop. I didn't think that was going to happen because I thought eventually Stearns would step in and say, "This is too much. We can't keep going. We can't do this." Um, but he didn't, or maybe he did, and Cohen said, "I own the team. Screw you." Um, but yeah, it's clear to me that he was never going to be outbid. Never. It was never going to happen. And I think the Yankees realized that too, and that's why they decided not to match. I don't think an extra 40 or so $1 million would have made a difference to Cohen. So if they matched him, he would have said, "Okay, I'll give you 50. I'll give you 850. I'll give you 900. I don't care. Just let's get it done." So that's the first thing. I just think everyone, including the Yankees, realized that Cohen was just not going to be beat. The second thing I think that really helped the Mets get him, was that just the Yankee arrogance. I think that they never tried to make a connection with him. I think they thought he tasted the Bronx. He hit with Aaron Judge. He's never going to leave. Why would you ever leave the Yankees? He's a 26-year-old kid from the Dominican Republic. He doesn't care about the Yankees. He doesn't care about the aura. He doesn't care about 27 championships. That's in the past. He wasn't alive for most of those championships. Was he alive for two of those championships when he was a kid? He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the roll call and the mystique. Monument Park. He doesn't care. He wanted money, and he wanted a good situation going forward. The Yankees have the money, but sometimes they operate as a big market team and sometimes they don't. They clearly went all out for him. They offered $760 million. They wanted him back. Um, but he couldn't see the future there. I think that was a huge part of it. I think the money obviously was the number one thing. Whoever offered the most money was probably going to get him. But I think the secondary thing, and probably not that far behind, was that look at the Yankees going forward. You have a 33-year-old Judge, a 35-year-old Garrett Cole. That's their core. Who else do they have there? Jazz Chisholm? I mean, he doesn't excite anyone. And yeah, they have Dominguez, who they've been talking about for years, who was one of the best international free agents to ever sign. So, yeah, he has a future, but that's one guy. The Yankee fans always talk about Spencer Jones, and they don't have a farm system. They have one of the worst ranked farm systems in baseball, and they just are arrogant, and they almost want you to beg to be a Yankee. Today's players don't do that. Aaron Judge was an outlier. Aaron Judge was drafted by the Yankees. He came up through the system. He was developed by them. So he wasn't trying to leave. He didn't want to leave. So he took less money to go to the Yankees. Soto was a mercenary. He was there for a year. He didn't care. He reports are coming out that he didn't even really make an attempt to build relationships because he didn't care enough. He knew he wanted to make it easy to leave if he had to. Um, but I also think that the Yankees' own arrogance, they didn't try to develop a relationship with him. If Hal Steinbrenner or Brian Cashman made more of an effort to bring him into decision making, or at least check in with him and see how he's doing more often, maybe he stays. Maybe he feels a little bit of the love. I think that's one thing the Mets also offer is they have a real family run business. They Lindor has dinner at Steve Cohen's house. When they were courting Starling Marte, Steve Cohen had him to his house and they watched a movie in the theater room. And those are the kind of things that I think today's player likes. They want to feel like they're involved. And the Yankees are going to either have to give up on We're the Yankees. If you don't want to play here, then we don't want you. And you should always want, everyone wants to play here. You have to give up on that. That's not what today's players want. Whether you love it or hate it, that's not what it is anymore. In the 90s, you could do that. In the early 2000s, you could do that. Guys don't care about that anymore. So I think that's really all I have to say on that. The Yankee fans who are saying it's a mistake and all that, I don't really care. Is the contract going to be bad in 10 years? Yeah, it will be. Do I care? No. Does Steve Cohen care? No. If you win 2 World Series, 3 World Series in those 10 years, nobody's going to care. And in 10 years, who knows what the top players are going to be making? They could be making $100 million, and Juan Soto's contract looks like peanuts. Like you look at Judges now and you say, "Oh, that's not a bad contract. That's actually a good deal." In 10 years, you might be saying that about other guys you never even heard of yet. So I don't care what's going to happen in 10 years. I care what's going to happen this year, and I think that's part of being a big market team, and that's what we've really become now. I think for years we looked at ourselves as a big market team, and we looked at ourselves as competitive with the Yankees and the Dodgers and even like the Phillies and the Braves and those guys who build great organizations. And we thought we were with them, and we weren't. This is really our first step. You look at a team like the Braves with Acuna and all those guys. They developed all those guys, so they're not a big market team, but they have great scouting and development, and they can find those guys. We're just building that in the organization. This is new with David Stearns and Steve Cohen. They've built all these systems to be like the Braves or be like the Dodgers, who have great internal systems to find those guys and develop those guys. Um, but right now, it's not ready. We don't have those guys ready to come up, so you have to supplement with big time free agents, and that's what I think they're willing to do. I think that Soto was the outlier. I don't see the Mets going out there right now and signing Burns and Freed and you know, Teoscar Hernandez and all that. I think now it becomes more of a normal David Stearns offseason. I think this was the get that Cohen wanted. He said this is the piece that we can build around with Lindor and with Soto. Those are our guys now going forward. That's our core, along with Nimmo and along with Vientos and along with Alvarez. Um, I just think that now you have something to build around. Last year we surprised everybody. We're not going to surprise anyone anymore. Now it's expected. You're expected to win now, and that's a different position for us. We've never been in that position, uh, so it's going to be tougher now going forward. Teams are going to look at us as someone you have to take seriously, and hey, that's what it's all about. That's what we've wanted. We've only wanted this. Um, so I really want to get more into what's going to come next. I don't think we're in for the big free agents. I think the only one I can see is Pete, because I think there's mutual interest in coming back, especially now that Soto's there. You can't sign Soto and then just be like, okay, well, we'll figure it out as we go. Now you have to be all in. So, and that's different for Stearns, because I don't think Stearns going all in means spending another $200 million. I think that means identifying different things that can improve the team without necessarily spending a ton more money. I think they're still going to spend. I think, honestly, now I think with Soto signing, before I thought Alonso was probably gone, I think now it's more likely that he comes back. And I've kind of seen it reported both ways. Some guys say, he's definitely coming back. Now they're focusing on Pete, and other people are saying, no, now if they sign Soto, they don't want to spend more money on Pete. I think it makes it more likely because you still need that protection in the lineup for Soto. Because having Vientos sitting behind him, who we all think is going to be great, you don't really know. He had one good year. It could have been a fluke. I don't think it is. I don't think any of us really think it is, but it could be. So I think bringing back Pete, even though he seems like he might not be the same guy he was a few years ago, he hit 34 home runs this year, around there. Anyone would take that as a down year. If he hits 35 home runs every year for the next 5 years or 6 years of a contract, he's going to own all the Mets records. So I'm not worried about his production going forward. He might not be a superstar, but he's good protection in the lineup because you have to fear his ability to hit the home run. So I think Pete comes back, hopefully. Um, I don't see them making any other big free agency splashes. I don't think Burns or Freed will be coming to the Mets. I think that's where the Yankees will pivot now. I think they're going to go more towards the pitching side and just try to make a dominant pitching staff, which that might work. That might work better for them. They got to the World Series with Soto, but they were miles behind the Dodgers, just like the Mets were. I'm not saying the Mets were any better. The Mets are still not as good as the Dodgers, even with Soto. Even if they re-signed Pete, they're not as good as the Dodgers. Nobody is, and I don't think anyone will be this year. I think the Dodgers will still go into everything as the favorite. But you want to be that number two team. You want to be that team that competes. That, hey, the Dodgers might be better, but doesn't mean we're giving up. It doesn't mean that we're not trying to take them out. It doesn't mean that we're not trying to, make the World Series and win the World Series. You still have to try to do that, especially when you make a splash like this. You're expected to now. So there's a couple different ways I think they can go in the pitching market. There's a few guys on the free agent market that can still work that are kind of mid-range options, um, and that would be Mania, which I wanted Mania back, but with the signings that they've already made with Clay Holmes and Montas, I think that's you have your middle to back end of the rotation set. You need a frontline guy, and I don't think Mania is that guy. I think he's a solid number three starter. I think that's what they're hoping Montas or Clay Holmes could be. I don't think you need another guy who's a number three starter. Now, if he comes back, I'm not going to hate the move, but I don't think that they're setting themselves up for the best. I would love to have Mania back. I think he was great for the team last year. He was great for the pitching staff. He improved so much when he changed his arm slot. But I think you need to think a little bit bigger than that. I think you need to go more towards a front end of the rotation kind of guy. If you're going to bring in two more guys, then yeah, Mania would probably work as well as another pitcher. Walker Bueller's another guy who's intriguing because off of last year, yeah, he wasn't good, but he was coming off an injury, and as it got into the playoffs, he performed way better. And I think that's just a matter of getting healthier, um, getting stretched out, getting better rehab. Just overall better worked out. So I think that would be intriguing because he's a guy who's probably a low end 3 or 4 starter, but has the potential, maybe not to be an ace, but to be that solid number two starter, or maybe if everything breaks right and maybe the Mets work with him a little bit and he becomes what he was before, which was a Cy Young candidate. I don't see that, but it might. It's still there. It's still somewhere in there. Another guy is Nathan Eovaldi. He's a guy who just continues every year to be one of the most consistent starting pitchers in baseball. I don't think at his age he's at the level of being an ace, but he is a front end of the rotation kind of guy. I don't think he'll cost a lot. He's not going to be a lot of years. I think he's like 37 years old, 36, 37 years old. So he's not a young guy who's going to get a long-term deal. You're probably looking at a 2-year contract, maybe 3, for a decent AAV. Um, so he's another intriguing option. If it were me, and we're going the free agency route, I would target either Bueller or Evaldi. But Evaldi, he kind of strikes me as like one of those Verlander, Scherzer, end of the career. You don't know when Father Time's going to come calling. You don't know if he's going to be able to continue to pitch at this level or how long. When is he going to lose the fastball? It's riskier, but like I said, he's been one of the more consistent pitchers in the majors for years now. So that's another. So those are the 3 names that I really look at in free agency if they're going to go that route. Obviously, we all have our hearts with Mania because of what he did last year, because he was part of that team that we all loved. But I think there are better options unless they're going to get 2 guys. Um, I really think the way they're going to go, if they are looking for a real front end of the rotation guy, is with a trade. There's a lot of talk going on right now that both the Yankees and Mets are aggressive after going after Crochet from the White Sox. Um, I think that would be a huge move. It's going to cost you a lot because he's a 25-year-old left-handed starting pitcher. He's probably one of the best left-handed starting pitchers in baseball. But in saying that, he's also never really had a full season. I think his highest innings pitched was 146. So he's never been a workhorse. He averages about less than 5 innings a start. But you get a guy like that, and with the pitching lab, and he's also been reluctant to pitch a lot of innings because he wants a long term deal. So maybe that's a trade that you make and then sign him to a long term deal, and then those limits come off. Though you don't have to worry about, oh, he's only a 5 inning pitcher, he's only a 4 inning pitcher. But even then, a 4 or 5 inning pitcher, the Dodgers won the World Series last year with bullpen games. So I don't think that's the end of the world as long as you're able to build a strong bullpen. Um, so we'll see what happens with Crochet. I think you're going to have to give up a lot. I think it's going to be a trade centered around Jet Williams, um, which I'm okay with. Listen, I'm not a prospect hugger. We don't know what these guys are. We don't know anything about them. So if you give up three of your best prospects, maybe your number one and your number five and your number 17 prospect, is it going to hurt you? Like, you don't know what these guys are. Go out there and get a proven guy, a guy who you know is going to pitch well. A guy that I'm not hearing a lot of chatter about is Castillo. Sorry, Luis Castillo. Before the winter meetings and before, like, earlier on in the offseason, we were hearing some rumblings that he was available in a trade. He's another frontline starting pitcher. I think that he could really be a difference maker. I don't think he's at the high end level. He's probably more of an Evaldi kind of guy, a younger version, who probably will make less money. Evaldi would probably be at the $25 million a year range, something like that, where I think Castillo's making like 21. So I think it's about the same level of pitcher there. But he is a frontline guy. And I think, but either, and I don't think you have to give as much up to get him. I don't think it's going to be a Jet Williams type thing. It might be more of an Acuna, who I don't think he really has a spot on the team, and I don't think he will, because from what I hear, the Mets are reluctant to trade Jeff McNeil just because of his versatility. Also, you have Mauricio, you have Beatty, who Stearns said he appreciates Beatty changing his game around where he has a little more versatility now. Maybe they're trying to turn him into more of a Jeff McNeil type. They said he could play the outfield, he could play second base, he could play third base. He has some options. So I don't think Acuna really has a role on the team going forward. He's a good bat to ball guy, but he doesn't have power. He has a lot of speed, plays good defense, but he's not a bona fide prospect. And at this point, I think he's about 25, 24, 25 years old. He's at the level where he's not really a prospect anymore. He's kind of just a guy, a quadruple A player. So I don't really see him as the answer anywhere. So if you can center a deal for Castillo on him, um, you probably need to give up something a little bit more than that, but maybe you can center a deal around him and work it that way. Those are really the two trade options that you hear. Either one I'd be happy with. Crochet would be, you're trading for a guy who you think might be your future ace. Um, Castillo is more of a guy who is probably more of a number two starter, maybe a low end number one. You just need guys at this point. You have a lot of 3 and 4 starters, 4 and 5 starters in reality on this team. Turning Clay Holmes into a starter, he's probably not going to be a 6, 7 inning pitcher. He's going to be a 4 or 5 inning pitcher, especially early in the season. He hasn't pitched 150 innings in a season, 200 innings in a season. So I don't see him in his first year as a starter doing that. So I think there's still a lot of work to do on the pitching side. And we just have to put our trust in Stearns that he knows what he's doing. I think that from what Andy Martino was saying on SNY, the Soto signing was Steve Cohen, and he identified this guy as someone he wanted to build a team around. And now we go back into more of a David Stearns offseason, where he's going to look for value. He's going to look for guys who can help the team but aren't going to kill you moving forward. And I think this was their plan all along. That's why they didn't spend last offseason. That's why they said last year was a good transition year, because this was always their plan, was to get Soto this year. They needed to change the perception of the Mets. You can't say LOL Mets anymore. And some people still will say, oh, he's spending $100 million. You had to pay a guy $100 million to come here. It doesn't matter. You needed to change the perception that people have. The Yankee fans are mad. That's a bonus. We don't care what they have to say. If they would have signed him for the same contract, they would have been peacocking around saying the Mets are broke, the Mets don't spend money, who's Steve Cohen, he doesn't do anything. So it was a lose-lose situation. Either you sign him and you overpay, or you don't sign him. And what happened? I thought Steve Cohen was the richest guy in the sport. So either way, it was they were going to talk. They're talking about his deficiencies and whatever. Who cares? So yeah, I think going forward, the plan should be bring Pete back. I mean, that lineup with Pete in it, Lindor, Soto, uh, Pete, Vientos, Nimmo, Alvarez, like we're up there with maybe not as good as the Dodgers with three MVPs in their lineup, but we're about as close as you could get. We just need to focus on pitching at this point. So yeah, bring in a frontline starter or maybe two more of the mid range kind of guys, maybe a Manaya and a Bueller. You're going to be working with a 6-man rotation anyway. Also, one thing I didn't mention: there's a lot of news coming out about Roki Sasaki now that he's posted. Everyone assumed he was, including myself, that he's going to the Dodgers or the Padres because the Japanese pitchers tend to want to go to the West Coast. It's closer to Japan. It has a bigger Asian population. It's just they feel more comfortable there. You can't blame them for that. There's also a ton more endorsement opportunities out there, and the Japanese market's very big on the West Coast. But what we're hearing now is that that's not his main motivation going forward. He wants a great pitching lab. He wants a great, development. He wants to develop into a better pitcher. And I don't see a better one out there right now than the Mets. You have Jeremy Hefner as the pitching coach, who's been a sought after pitching coach for years. He's survived 3 different regimes with the Mets. He just keeps getting hired back no matter who's in charge. He's always back with the team. So there's something there. And then you stole the assistant pitching coach from the Yankees, who's known in those circles as well. And David Stearns is known for fixing pitchers, for improving pitchers. You look at Manaya and Severino last year. Manaya's change came a lot on his own because he saw Chris Sale pitching and kind of emulated that. But Severino was the worst pitcher in baseball 2 years ago. Legitimately, if you look at the stats, he was the worst starting pitcher in baseball. And they turned him into a serviceable pitcher. He's not an ace anymore, but he's a good number 3 starter, good number 2 starter. Yeah, obviously the Mets weren't going to pay him what the A's paid him. The A's had to overpay him to get him to go there, and he was looking out for his pocketbook, which you can't you can't fault him for doing. He wanted the money. It's probably his last big contract. He wanted to go make the money. So I think because you look at Sasaki, because he's not going to be the highest bidder. Cohen's money doesn't matter with Sasaki. The Dodgers' money doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everyone is at the same level. In fact, the lower market teams are actually at an advantage because they get more international free agent signing bonus. So it's all equal. So it's where do you want to play at the end of the day? Everyone can offer the same thing. And what we're finding out is Sasaki doesn't necessarily care about playing on the West Coast. He doesn't necessarily care about playing with Ohtani, and I'm sure he does. I'm sure that in his mind that means something to him, playing with Ohtani or playing with Yamamoto, or even in San Diego, playing with Darvish. But we have Senga. I don't know how much that really matters to these guys. I think it helps them be more comfortable with their new team if they have someone they can at least converse with, because most players aren't learning Japanese. They don't speak the same language. They can't converse with them. So I think It's probably a long shot. We're still probably number 3 on the list, but from what was reported, the Mets are the only East Coast team that he's even considering. If we get Sasaki, then you don't necessarily need to go top end. You don't need to trade for Crochet. You don't need, to trade for Castillo. You can go with a Manaya or a Bueller or a Valdi. Because while he might not be an ace right away, the hope is for him going forward is that that's what he'll become. He might even start the season in AAA to just kind of get his feet wet with American baseball. I don't. It's not one that I expect, but it's one that could happen. It's not something that's a 0% chance. Probably a 5% chance, but it's better than we had any with any of the other Japanese pitchers really. So yeah, going forward, I think that's our biggest moves. Obviously, bullpen. Stearns knows what he's doing with the bullpen. I'm not going to go into individual guys. There's rumors that they're involved with Loizaga, um, a guy coming off an injury. He was great before the injury. You don't know how he's going to be now. But I just trust Stearns. He knows what he's doing with the bullpen. He'll figure that out. He'll bring in 4 or 5 guys that are interchangeable that you can try to fix and try to. I'm not worried about the bullpen. That he'll get that figured out. Um, but yeah, let me know what you guys think is our biggest need going forward. Obviously, everyone's probably going to say pitching or bring back Pete. But let me know some names that I didn't mention. Let me know some new ideas that maybe I don't have. Um, but yeah, until next time, let's go Mets.